Can you solve all these Class 10 English Supplementary, Chapter 1, A Triumph of Surgery questions? Joe was a... Well picked. Greyhound is the correct answer. Who was Joe? Strong choice. The greyhound is the right answer. Who is Hodkin? Nicely done. Gardner is a solid answer. Who is Tricky? Correct response. Dog is the most accurate answer. What is lumbago? Solid response. Muscle and joint pain is a valid choice. How did Tricky look? You chose bloated sausage, and it is correct. Who was the chauffeur? Perfect. Mrs. Pumphrey's driver is the correct choice. Who is Mrs. Pumphrey? Excellent. Rich mistress is a brilliant choice. Who was the narrator? Great job. A no is the accurate answer. The greedy man showed. Nice work. You chose fear and it is correct. Tricky was a pet dash. Good thinking. Dog is the right answer. What does swoon mean? You're right. Faint is the correct answer. What did Tricky lack? Excellent choice. Exercise is the right answer. James Harriet is a dash. Nice selection. Veterinary surgeon is the correct and valid answer. What was the dog's name? Correct. Tricky is the right answer. What was Tricky lacking? Great thinking. Exercise is the right choice. Triumph of surgery means... Well done. Both B and C is the right choice. What do you mean by lithe? Sharp thinking. Flexible is the right choice. How old was the thief boy? Right choice. 15 years is the best answer. What is Tricky's full name? Good job. Tricky will works well here. What was the gardener's name? Right again. Hodgkin is a valid answer. Hodgkin was the name of Dash. Valid point. Gardener is true. What is the name of the dog? Clear logic. Your choice, Tricky, is sound. The owner of Tricky was Dash. Smart move. Mrs. Pumphrey is an accurate answer. The word appealing means dash. You got it. Your choice attention getting is right. Who was Tristan in the story? Well reasoned. Mr. Harriet's servant is the correct choice. How would you describe the vet? Smart pick. Tactful is the correct choice. How many coats did Tricky have? On track. One whole cupboard is the correct answer. What was the dog unable to play? Bravo! Ring throw is the answer. Who is Mrs. Pumphrey's gardener? Exactly. Hodkin makes sense. Who is the narrator of the story? Well picked. Dr. James Harriet is the correct answer. How long was Tricky hospitalized? On track. 2 weeks is the correct answer. What was Tricky's main fault? You're right. Agreed is the correct answer. Where did Dr. Harriet take Tricky? Valid point. To his surgery is true. What did people do in the surgery? Great thinking. Took care of dogs is the right choice. What do you call an animal doctor? Clear logic. Your choice veterinarian is sound. What kind of coat did Tricky wear? Sharp thinking. Rough surfaced woolen cloth is the right choice. Tricky had no medicinal treatment. Correct response. True is the most accurate answer. What is the meaning of scrimmage? Good job. Rough or confused struggle works well here. What did author compare Tricky with? Bravo, bloated sausage is the answer. Who does? Refer to in the story. Excellent choice. Veterinary surgeon is the right answer. What would Tricky wear on wet days? Good thinking. A raincoat is the right answer. Mrs. Pumphrey was a very dasher lady. Nicely done. Rich is a solid answer. What is the meaning of distraught? Smart pick. Both B and C is the correct choice. Which disease was Hodgkin down with? Right again. Lumbago is a valid answer. Who was Mrs. Pumphrey worried about? Nice selection. Her dog Tricky is the correct and valid answer. What type of lady Mrs. Pumphrey was? Strong choice. Rich is the right answer. Who was shocked at Tricky's appearance? Solid response. Mr. Harriet is a valid choice. How would you describe Mrs. Pumphrey? Right choice. Overdoing is the best answer. Where did Tricky sleep at the surgery? Correct. In a box is the right answer. Who do you blame for Tricky's illness? Exactly. Mrs. Pumphrey makes sense. Name of the dog in the chapter is Dash. Well done. Tricky is the right choice. Tricky was not given any food for Dash. Well reasoned. 2 days is the correct choice. For how many days he was given no food? You chose 2, and it is correct. What does the author compare Tricky to? Smart move. A bloated sausage is an accurate answer. For how long was Tricky at the surgery? Great job! A fortnight is the accurate answer. Tricky took a walk round the Dash bowls. You got it? Your choice shining is right. Who said it was a triumph of surgery? Excellent. Mrs. Pumphrey is a brilliant choice. Was Tricky a spoilt and over-pampered dog? Nice work. You chose true and it is correct. What did Mr. Harriet notice about Tricky? Perfect. Tricky was overwhelmed is the correct choice. Was Tricky happy on seeing Mrs. Pumphrey? Nice selection. Yes is the correct and valid answer. Who is the writer of A Triumph of Surgery? Clear logic. Your choice, James Harriet, is sound. Did Mr. Harriet actually perform a surgery? Smart pick. False is the correct choice. How did Tricky become after the treatment? You got it? Your choice hard-muscled is right. No medicinal treatment was given to Tricky.
Valid point. True is true. What is the name of the veterinary surgeon? Perfect. Mr. Harriet is the correct choice.
How many days Tricky was kept in the surgery?
Right again. 15 days is a valid answer.
What was the name of Mrs. Pumphrey's dog?
You chose A, Tricky, and it is correct. Is the narrator as rich as Tricky's mistress? On track. No is the correct answer. What is the name of Mrs. Pumphrey's gardener? Excellent choice. Hodgkin is the right answer. What, according to Harriet, is Tricky's fault? Well done. Greed for food is the right choice. What treatment Tricky was given by Harriet? Great job. No treatment at all is the accurate answer. What was the main reason for Tricky's obesity? Solid response. Lack of exercise is a valid choice.
How did Mrs. Pumphrey feel after meeting Tricky?
Correct. Happy is the right answer. What is the meaning of the word convalescing? Good job. Recovering works well here. What did Mrs. Pumphrey think Tricky suffered from?
Well reasoned. Malnutrition is the correct choice.
What did Mr. Harriet mean by harden your heart? Right choice. Be strict with Tricky is the best answer. Which of the following is the correct salutation? Good thinking. Respected sir is the right answer.
Mrs. Pumphrey strictly cut down on Tricky's sweets.
Well picked. False is the correct answer. Mrs. Pumphrey knew that she was overfeeding Tricky. Excellent. False is a brilliant choice.
Tricky soon became the dash among the Shaggy crew.
Great thinking. Silky little object is the right choice. What did Tricky do after he started feeling better? Sharp thinking. Played with other dogs is the right choice. How did Tricky express his joy seeing Mrs. Pumphrey? Nice work. You chose all of the above and it is correct.
What did Mrs. Pumphrey send to help Tricky recover?
You're right. Fresh eggs and brandy is the correct answer. What extra food does Mrs. Pumphrey give to the dog? Bravo. All of the above is the answer. At the surgery, the dash dogs surged round the poet. Nicely done. Household is a solid answer. Hari tried to use flattery to win over Aniel. It means. Exactly. Insincere praise makes sense. Harriet knew that Tricky would fall sick before long. Correct response. True is the most accurate answer. What did the dogs do to Tricky when he first arrived? Strong choice. Inspected him is the right answer. Was the narrator waiting for a call from Mrs. Pumphrey? Smart move. Yes is an accurate answer. What did Mrs. Pumphrey think her dog is suffering from? Sharp thinking. Malnutrition is the right choice. Who is the author of the story? Triumph of Surgery. Clear logic. Your choice, James Harriet, is sound. How did the staff benefit from Mrs. Pumphrey's overdoing? Great thinking. All of the above is the right choice. Does Harriet treat the dog how Mrs. Pumphrey would like? Perfect. No is the correct choice. James thought that Tricky should be hospitalized for Dash. Great job. 14 days is the accurate answer. What problem does Mrs. Pumphrey think Tricky has? Diarrhea. Nice work. You chose malnutrition, and it is correct. I think I know a cure for you. What is the cure? Solid response. A, controlling Tricky's diet is a valid choice. What was the name of the greyhound in the author's clinic? Well done. Joe is the right choice. What adjective was used to describe Tricky in the beginning? You got it? Your choice, greedy, is right. What did Tricky do when the other dogs finished their food? Bravo. Lick the empty bowls is the answer. Who does refer to in the story? A triumph of surgery. Smart pick. James Harriet is the correct choice.
In 2 weeks, Tricky had been transformed into a Dash animal.
Excellent. Liz, muscled is a brilliant choice. What was Harriet's feeling when he saw Tricky's appearance? Good job. Shocked works well here. Tricky was recovered because of Harriet's medical treatment. Well picked. False is the correct answer. What did Tricky do when he saw Mrs. Pumphrey after recovery? Right again. Ran into her lap is a valid answer. The poor lady almost swooned. What does swooned mean here? On track. Fainted is the correct answer. What was Tricky compared to in the beginning of the chapter? Correct response. Sausage is the most accurate answer. Whom did Mrs. Pumphrey consult regarding the health of Tricky? Good thinking. Dr. Harriet is the right answer. When Mr. Harriet took Tricky to his clinic, Mrs. Pumphrey was? Valid point. Wailing is true. James used to have Dash for breakfast that Mrs. Pumphrey sent. Well reasoned. Eggs is the correct choice. What was Tricky's reaction when he heard the dogs in the yard? Exactly. He whimpered makes sense. How long did Harriet ask her to keep Tricky under observation? Nice selection. 2 weeks is the correct and valid answer. When Tricky was seriously ill, who did Mrs. Pumphrey make a call? You chose to a vet, and it is correct. When Tricky was ill, whom did Mrs. Pumphrey make a frantic call? Nicely done. James Harriet is a solid answer. What did Mr. Harriet think about Mrs. Pumphrey's care for Tricky? You're right. It was excessive is the correct answer. None of the things sent for Tricky's stay in the clinic was used. Right choice. True is the best answer. What did Mrs. Pumphrey believe was the cause of Tricky's illness? Excellent choice. Malnutrition is the right answer. Mrs. Pumphrey and the chauffeur got out of the car to fetch Tricky. Smart move. False is an accurate answer.
who slopped down the food into the bowls of the dogs at the clinic. Correct. Tristan is the right answer.
The dogs at the clinic took no interest in Tricky because he was.
Strong choice. A dull and boring is the right answer. Mrs. Pumphrey used to give Dash to Tricky at night to make him sleep. Good thinking. A bowl of Horlicks is the right answer.
And did you cut down on the sweet things as I told you? Who said this?
Good job. James Herriot works well here.
What does the narrator refer to Tricky as in the group of other dogs?
Perfect. Silky little object is the correct choice. James marched out to the car, carrying the little dog wrapped in a dash. Smart pick. Blanket is the correct choice. How did Mr. Herriot feel about Tricky's potential as a permanent guest?
Strong choice. He was tempted is the right answer.
He was so listless. What does the word listless not correspond to? Exactly. Scared makes sense. For how many days did Mr. Herriot ask Mrs. Pumphrey to hospitalize Tricky? You're right. For about a fortnight is the correct answer. How did Tricky look when Mr. Herriot saw him in the street with his mistress? Great job. Hugely fat is the accurate answer. What food has Mrs. Pumphrey been feeding Tricky between meals to build him up? Right choice. Malt and cod liver oil is the best answer. Were the toys, cushions, coats, and bowls used while Tricky was at the surgery? Correct. No is the right answer. Mr. Herriot didn't use any of Tricky's beds, toys, cushions, coats, and bowls. On track. True is the correct answer. When Mrs. Pumphrey comes to know that Tricky is recovering, she sends forth Dash. Smart move. Brandy and eggs is an accurate answer. Within minutes, about a dash of gleaming black metal drew up outside the surgery.
Well reasoned. 30 feet is the correct choice. What was Mrs. Pumphrey's reaction when she learned Tricky would be hospitalized?
Excellent choice. She was distraught is the right answer. The poet suggested that he be hospitalized for about a dash to be kept under observation. Well done. Fortnight is the right choice. On the third day, when Tricky came out, he was engulfed by Joe, the dasher, and his friends. Correct response. Greyhound is the most accurate answer. In 2 weeks, he had been transformed into a lithe, hard-muscled animal. What does lithe mean? Solid response. Flexible is a valid choice. Tricky looked like a bloated sausage at the starting. State whether the statement is true or false. Sharp thinking. True is the right choice. During his stay at the surgery, Tricky was unable to become an accepted member of the gang of dogs. Great thinking. False is the right choice. The expected call came within a few days. Mrs. Pumphrey was distraught. Expected. Unexpected dash. Distraught. Right again. Composed is a valid answer. For a few nights, the fine spirit was rolled around, inhaled, and reverently drunk. What does reverently mean? Well picked. Respectfully is the correct answer.
In 2 weeks, he had been transformed into a lithe, hard-muscled animal. What is the meaning of the word lither? You chose graceful, and it is correct.
The word convalescing seemed to do something to Mrs. Pumphrey. What is not the meaning of the word convalescing?
Excellent. Lo's strength is a brilliant choice. Tricky's owner was poor, so she was not able to give her dog a proper diet. Tick whether this statement is true or false.
Clear logic. Your choice false is sound.
I was able to tell her that the little fellow was out of danger and convalescing rapidly. What does convalescing mean? Bravo! Improving is the answer.
Tricky was playing with the other dogs during its first day at the hospital. State whether this statement is true or false.
Valid point. False is true.
Mrs. Pumphrey hastened to explain. Was so listless, Mr. Herriot. He seemed to have no energy. Hastened. Listless. No energy.
You got it. Your choice quick to do something is right.
Who do you blame for Tricky's illness?
Nice selection. Mrs. Pumphrey is the correct and valid answer. Tricky soon became the dash among the shaggy crew.
Nicely done. Silky little object is a solid answer. Who is the author of the story? A triumph of surgery? Nice work. You chose James Herriot, and it is correct. He had no medicinal treatment of any kind, but all day he ran about with the dogs, joining in their friendly scrimmages. What does scrimmages mean? You got it. Your choice fights is right.
I had pulled up my car when I saw him in the street with his mistress, and I was shocked at his appearance. He had become Dash, who is he referred in the above lines.
You chose Trick, and it is correct.
Well, he has his little walks with me, as you can see, but Hodgkin, the gardener, has been down with lumbago, so there has been no ring throwing lately. Point 5. Who is Hodgkin?
Well picked. Gardener is the correct answer.
Which part should the sentence be? Ow. In short, I think we really need to take actions immediately in order to raise the environmental awareness of students in our school.
You're right. Conclusion is the correct answer. Tricky became an accepted member of the gang, an unlikely, silky little object among the shaggy crew, fighting like a dash for his share at mealtimes and hunting rats in the old hen house at night.
Solid response. Tiger is a valid choice.
The chauffeur was still holding the car door open, and when Tricky saw his mistress, he took off from my arms in a tremendous leap and sailed into Mrs. Pumphrey's lap. Point 7. Was Tricky happy on seeing Mrs. Pumphrey?
Correct response. Yes is the most accurate answer.
When I opened the door, Tricky trotted out and was immediately engulfed by Joe, the greyhound, and his friends. After rolling him over and thoroughly inspecting him, the dogs moved off down the garden. 111 Jin, who was Joe.
Valid point. Greyhound is true.
His eyes, bloodshot and rihimi, stared straight ahead and his tongue lolled from his jaws. Mrs. Pumphrey hastened to explain. It was so listless, Mr. Herriot. He seemed to have no energy. Point 2. What is the name of the veterinary surgeon? Great job. Mr. Herriot is the accurate answer. How you will get all these quiz questions in PDF books format? Correct.
Contact Narayan Chengdar on Facebook is the right answer.